What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Crazy One. As always, I'm your host, Stephen Gates, and this is the channel where we talk about creativity, leadership, design, and all kinds of other stuff. Now, hey, if you like this content, do me a favor, make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit that little bell so you get the latest videos whenever those come out. Now, today what I want to talk about is one of the questions that I get asked by most leaders everywhere. I don't care what industry you're in, how big your team is, how much experience you have. They're all struggling to try to figure out, how do they put their mark on their team? How do they have some influence? How do they lead all these people? But at the same time, how do they respect those people? How do they let them bring their creativity and their talent to the team and strike the right balance between the two? And it can be really hard. But so what I've done is, through my career and through a lot of the coaching I've done, I've developed this ratio, this 10-80-10 ratio that I think is going to really help you out, figure out how to get that just right. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's get into it. So it can be a little bit tricky to figure out how do you get that leadership balance right. Because on the one hand, you want to be somebody who has some amount of control, that you lead your team, that you have a voice, because ultimately you're often the one who's held accountable for the results. But at the same time, you want to respect the people on your team. You want to grow their talent. And so you have to strike this delicate mix and this delicate balance to be able to get that right. Now, most of the time, what I'm going to tell people to do is to try, when you look at all of your time, so 100% of your time, to break that up into 3 blocks: 10%, 80%, 10%. And what I like to do is to use this as just sort of guides, so that whenever you're going through, you're working with your team, generally you're trying to make sure that the way that you're working with them falls into these 3 buckets. Now, the first 10%, this is going to be that, look, whenever you are working with a team, what you don't want to do is to teach them or to train them that every time there's a problem, every time they can't figure something out, anytime something gets difficult, they come running to you. So the first 10% of the time, what I will tell you to do is just, there are times when you need to leave the team alone, which is just sort of let them work through it. They need to grow up. They need to figure out how to work together, how to invest in each other, how just to do some things differently. But in that moment, that's what I want to do, is I just want to leave them alone and let them work through it. Now, the middle and the biggest piece, that 80%. Because here again, what you want to do is you want to strike a balance. You want to strike a balance between, how do I know that I bring something to the table, that I have an opinion, I think there's a direction that we want to go in, but like I said, you want to respect their talent. So for this 80%, what I always like to do is when I'm working with them, when I'm giving them feedback, whenever I'm trying to direct them, I'm trying to speak in insights and opportunities, not answers. Because, again, if I just give them the answer, one, not many people like to work for people like that long term because they don't feel like they're growing. They're not contributing anything. But that's the thing, is if I can say, hey, look, I don't think this is working, or can you think about this, or this hasn't quite been solved yet. Again, I'm giving my opinion. I'm pointing out where there's still work to be able to be done there. But like I said, then I'm going to send them back to go off and do that work. So in that case, again, I'm not going to give them answers. Now, in the last 10%, that is the place where I'm going to give them answers, because 10% of the time, I am out of budget, patience, political capital, time, something, and the work just needs to get done. We don't have time to debate it. We don't have time to be able to continue this process. We need to move forward. We need to make progress. So for that 10%, I am going to give them the answers. I'm going to be really clear about what that is. Now, the trick to this ratio is in when you look at the percentages, that I want to leave that first 10% of leaving them alone and that last 10% of giving them the answers. Those are basically the nuclear options, that I want to try to do that as little as possible. Because again, if I'm leaving them alone, you may get variable results, right? Like, you're not always sure what's going to happen, so you don't want to do that a ton. And on the other hand, and I try to be very clear with my teams, if I'm coming in and I'm working alongside you, if I'm giving you the answers, unless we've been really clear that this is a moment when we're all equals, that's not an outcome that you want, right? Because that means that we're losing confidence, we're losing time, something has gone on, and I feel like I need to jump in. But for me, if I'm able to do that, spend 80% of my time speaking in insights and opportunities, that is often the best way to be able to do it, because then again, I can be able to then use timing to be able to say, hey, look, why don't we go work on this? Let's talk the end of this week, the end of today, next hour. Again, depending on what the urgency is and how much I think they're struggling, you can use time to be able to figure out, again, how quickly do I want to be able to check in on them so that, again, you still have some of that control, but it's not going to be micromanaging them. So I think if you're able to get that balance right, that ratio of 10, 80, 10, you're probably going to be able to figure out that, again, that leadership style is going to get better. Your team is going to want to work with you more. They feel like they're being invested in. They feel like they're growing, but you still feel like, again, there's that sort of freedom in a framework. You have some sort of control over it, so you're still going to get the results you want. Try that out. Let me know how that works. If there's any tweaks, anything you think maybe should be done differently, or other things that you found that are working, leave them down in the comments. Because again, I think, for me, it's always about building a community, and there are always better ways of being able to do things. But like I said, that's the one that's worked for me. So again, if you like this content, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell so you get the latest videos whenever those come out. Go out and try out that ratio. Let me know how it works. And as always, stay crazy.